This one I'm also guilty of.
That's it. That's my intro.
Hey, I'm Amanda, you're watching Swell Entertainment, and today we're talking about the cult of blind boxes, or what's not a cult but feels like a cult, blind box edition. What's not a cult but feels like a cult is a sort of content trend that I have done a couple of videos on, and it's usually something based in consumerism, typically, where there is a type of subculture niche or buying habit specifically around a thing. Feels a little culty. There's a trend of behavior. There's certain terms that gets used by this group. Logically, these things are not cults, but the behavior that these items elicit from this group can tend to feel a little more compulsory, obsessive, devoted.
But really quick, let me tell you about the sponsor for today's video, Squarespace. Do you want a place where you can sell the miniature duck figurines that you make? Or a place of your own where you can review your favorite mustards? Squarespace is the perfect place for you, an all-in-one website platform to help entrepreneurs stand out and succeed online. Squarespace has a ton of incredible pre-made templates, and with design intelligence, you can customize any part of it. You can revamp or set up your online store, and with Squarespace payments, they make it super streamlined to operate. And if you just want a place to showcase your work or your social media accounts, they make it super easy to connect all of those. Go to squarespace.com to get started on a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/swellentertainment to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.
I've done Squishmallows, I've done Ray Dunn, I've done Stanley Cups, but blind boxes, originally I was like, labubu. We gotta talk about labubu, but then I was like, but I don't think I can do labubu without talking about Sunny Angels. And then I was like, oh no, this is bigger than both of these things. Blind boxes. I looked up labubu because I was trying to find a word to like explain what I was meaning. And instead I was like, maybe this will like jog my memory for what I'm thinking of, because my brain is like refusing to give me the words. And so under people also ask, no AI popped up for labubu. Thank you, Google. But then I go down to people also ask, why is the answer also AI? Hey, can something not touch something else, please? The cult of AI is next. Okay, although half my videos feel like to be the cult of AI. According to AI Overview, labubu is a popular collectible toy that became a cultural phenomenon due to its unique appearance associated with K-pop star Lisa and its status as an art toy. So blind boxes, I would say, are not necessarily like culturally tied to anything. I could be wrong. I'm giving you my experience as someone who goes to a lot of cons, because I've always experienced blind boxes in a lot of comic book settings. I have been robbed from blind bag culture as well. I can't show you what I got because the video that I showed when I bought this thing, it got demonetized because I held this thing up for too long. It was a blind bag that I was like, I want to buy this at a LA Comic-Con. The blind bag had an awooga eyes on it. Okay. And I was like, this is calling to me. And then I didn't even get the bag that I wanted. He gave me a different bag because they recycled the drawings. And I was like, the drawings of a piece of paper, put it on something else. That's the one I want. Anyways, the thing that I got was not like a waifu statuette or anything like, it was an 18 and up blind bag, which my own gooning got me. No, what it was a penis plushie. And I was like, I'm annoyed because it wasn't even the bag I wanted. Okay, so I got screwed. That was one thing where it's like, I've also seen like the blind boxes where it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle blind boxes and things like that. Those are the ones that I've bought from. Oh wait, do I have the other one? To show that I have also fallen into this cult, I tried to grab all of the items that I have gotten from blind boxes. I can't get you the plushie, obviously. But that's been mostly my experience with them, is like nerd-based things. Blind boxes specifically on TikTok, I have been seeing a huge boom in recently. I would say in the last 6 months or so, I started getting a lot more of this content. Specifically labubus, which I had never heard of labubus or seen labubus prior to this, okay? And labubus, I kind of place them more in like the manchichi category, which manchichis are, how do I explain a manchichi? Manchichi was created in 1974 on the idea that such a doll as a gift could inspire friendship, love, and happiness to the younger ones, but also to people of all ages. Manchichis came into my cognition through like my entire life, because when I was born, I had a full head of hair. And so my parents just regularly called me Manchichi as a nickname. So I had a few of these dolls as a kid because they were like, oh, we gotta get Amanda one. When I first saw Labubu, this is what I thought of, was like one of these things. But these are very cutesy looking, whereas a Labubu has like a face. Okay. People also ask what the heck is a labubu. This is from Lifestyle Asia from December 2nd, 2024. Labubu is an elf character recognizable for several notable features: the pointy ears, the sharp teeth that protrude from its mouth, small stature, and mischievous smile. Labubu is a part of a group of creatures called the Monsters, a group of characters inspired by Nordic fairy tales, which I do think is fun. Labubu themselves, okay, I would say has its own cult following currently. Especially the ones that hang I think they all do. The ones that hang on people's bags. The bag charmification of Labubus, okay, has become so prevalent that there is now also a small subset of people that are doing Labubu protection recommendations to protect their Labubus on their bags because people are getting their Labubus stolen off of their purses. Their purses aren't being stolen. Their Labubus are being stolen. So there are literally like bags now that are being sold that you can fit your Labubu into to protect it from being taken off the keychain on your purse. People are stealing these things. I haven't seen anything about a shortage of Labubus. What I had seen a shortage of, these guys. These are Sunny Angels. They are little guys. I'm covering up the bits. They got little butts. This one's got bread. I have one that has a grape hat that connects to my computer. I can't take it down because it's stuck to my computer. It looks at me while I work. But the thing about Sunny Angels is that there was a full-on shortage of Sunny Angels. Every hot art girl you know has some of these. And I'm not calling myself a hot art girl. I bought these for the novelty of buying these. Okay. And honestly, the only one I really like is the grape one that's on my computer. Like I said, I had a consumerism problem. We'll talk more about these in a second. But like every hot art girl that you know has these things. I know someone who has them in a bowl in her apartment, like how people sometimes have like, you know, like apartment match, like custom apartment matchbooks or whatever. Like that's how they have these things. They're just like in a bowl, like almost like a party favor. But like if you touch them, she will rip your arm off. She loves these things. Okay. And I believe these things were created for a variety of reasons, which some people are creeped out by these things. I get it. They're not my personal favorite. I can acknowledge the purpose for them. But like as a whole, I'm like, they're just not for me. I'm just kind of like, they're like awkward. They stand up, but also not fully. They're good for like a desk liner and things like that. The Sunny Angel shortage was a real thing. This is from Vox by Alex Abad Santos. This tiny doll is making everyone so happy. Sunny Angels from TikTok trend to SNL sketch fodder explained. Over the past year, Sunny Angel, a biblically inaccurate 3-inch tall cherub figurine with peculiar headgear, has taken over the hearts, minds, phones, display shelves, and nightstands of collectors across the world. The plastic dolls, wearing helmets ranging in form from pancakes to sunflowers, are garnering millions of views on TikTok, Instagram, popping up in supermodel Bella Hadid's social media posts and on Victoria Beckham's phone, and the subject of an entire sketch on Saturday Night Live. Like any phenomenon where someone is buying tons of a thing that you may not be, the obvious questions arise. Why is everyone so obsessed with these tiny winged boys? Simplest answer is the official Sunny Angel slogan: he may bring you happiness. That's a tantalizing promise. Money can't buy you happiness, allegedly, but it can buy you a Sunny Angel. Money can absolutely buy you happiness. I fully believe money can buy you happiness because it can buy the things that lead to a happier life. And also, when you have more money, you do get less stressed over You know what's super stressful? Being broke. You know what's super stressful? Credit card debt. Money prevents those things. At the retail price of $10 per doll, that's a deal many have already taken, some collectors dozens of times over. A more fascinating answer is that maybe Sunny Angels, like anything else people love, give us a better understanding of what happiness is. What if you could find it in a tiny doll who wears a cute hat? And I think that as a whole, and why I wanted to talk about this as a whole as well, is because the concept of one, spending money has a dopamine reaction that we know. But also, buying a box, I know I should have done this sooner, okay, but a blind box as a whole is a box concept, ranging in prices. And there's usually a collection associated with the box that you are buying, different brands. Like I said, I've gotten Ninja Turtle ones. These are Sunny Angels. This is a little Monster Yeti guy. This is the little Loch Ness Monster one. She's missing her flags, but this is an adventure girl, okay? There's a different theme. And usually on the side of the box, there is a bunch of images of what you could get, but the box itself, aside from the branding of the box, does not give away anything about which toy is inside. Hence the blind box element. You get this box after you've paid your money. So you've already gotten yay, I got the thing that I wanted. I bought something that I wanted. Now let's hope I get the other thing that I want inside the box, okay? So then you open up the box and you get happy or bummed or meh. This is all a big way of me leading up that this is gambling. which people are realizing, and like some people knew, okay, when they were getting into blind boxes specifically, that they were engaging in gambling in some capacity. I wanted to also talk about this because when I thought about like, okay, what videos can I do? I really want to talk about blind boxes. I think I want to look into like that whole discussion and things like that. I had a brain blast from a couple of weeks ago when I was at the mall with Anarchy, okay? And Anarchy loves Jasmine. She's a Disney princess girl. Okay. She's a cosplay creator. She loves Jasmine. I got permission to tell this story from Anarchy, by the way. Typically when we're at the mall, if there's like a Pop Mart or any store like that, we'll pop in. Okay. Even though I'm not currently buying anything for my No Buy Year, but we pop in. Okay. And she saw the designs laid out for a new Disney collection of the Disney princesses that she liked. And so she was like, I want Jasmine, but I'm cool with most of the others, except for she didn't like the character design for Cinderella and she didn't like the character design for Mulan specifically. She likes Mulan, just didn't like the character design for this collection. So she got the one box, and then me and Chris were outside, and she came out, she opened up the box, and she immediately opened it and realized it was Mulan. And I saw her go through the stages of grief in front of me. And by the time she got to acceptance, she said, I'm gonna go buy another one. And I was like, no. She goes back into the store, buys another box. She's like, just the one. I'm just going to do the one. Buys the box. She got Jasmine. I got it. I was like, I'm going to remind you that this is never going to happen again, because next time this happens and you get the one you don't want when you buy a blind box, you're going to think just one more, because you're going to remember that time that you did a just one more. And you got the one you wanted. And I'm going to make you never forget that that's never going to happen again. It just won't. And I wanted to bring that up because I straight up was like, this is gambling. This is bad. This is bad. Okay, which side note, she gets on me about gambling every time we go to an arcade because she knows I have an addictive personality. And she knows when she sees me smacking the buttons on the coin drop machine, she's like, you have a problem. It's like, we know this. That's why I don't gamble. I'm getting tickets, not money. But that's the thing as well, where people are getting that same reaction of getting the one they want, not getting the one they wanted. I'm so curious about the secondhand market for these items. These, especially during the shortage, there was a secondhand market for these. I don't know if there's one to the same degree now, okay? Labubus, I believe there is starting to be a custom market that I am seeing because some of them take dye really well. And so there is a custom market, I think, kind of showing up for Labubus. I just saw a video yesterday where someone literally made their friend like a blind box of a Labubu that they had tattooed Sukuna's like tats on to the actual Labubu, and then gave that to a friend or whatever to like open up and like be like, oh, like which fun. Someone buying this for their desk. It's not harming anyone. Them going and buying it. You also got to think about the fact that some of these times these things come wrapped in plastic, wrapped in box, like the waste of a blind box outside of the actual plastic item that is inside of it. I do think there is some concern there, and I have seen a lot of people talk about it. It's like you guys are like literally gambling, but also you are being incredibly wasteful, because the concept of making it a blind box, they have to seal them, cover them in plastic, etc. Some of these items, like in the instance of the Disney Princess ones, those were full on encased in like a like the plastic thing that like sits inside the box, like the, what are they called? It's not plastic wrap. It's like the plastic, what is that called? Is there a word for that? I would assume so. Packaging, wrapping? That doesn't sound right. But like that's a chunk of plastic, okay, that's now just out and available, which again, these things are not going to go away, but I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing out the waste of these items. Like let's say I hated this one and I wanted, this is the stargazing Yeti, by the way, because he's like looking up. I like Yetis, so I buy Yetis. Also, if there's a Yeti or Bigfoot looking thing, I will buy it. Let's say I hated this one and I don't want to sell it because I know this was $6 or something. I'm not going to get $6 back for it. I could trade it and try and trade it. I feel like trading is something that I would like to hear more about in these spaces. I feel like I don't hear about it that much, but I don't know if that's not maybe just happening within like friend spaces and things like that. And also just because I haven't heard about it doesn't mean that it's not happening, for the record. Especially if it's like a lesser known item like this, the likelihood of there being like the ability of me getting the one I want. So I then go and buy 6 more things, maybe get the one I want. What do I then do with all these things that I hate? Because there's probably some people that are just throwing these things away, the ones they don't want. So then we're also literally throwing money away, but also we're throwing this hunk of plastic. Now I like these. I like this item. I think it's fun. I do think they are tiny little pieces of art, and different art is in different eyes of the beholder. But not everyone's going to feel the same way. You know, some people are going to be like, this isn't the one I want, I'm throwing it out. I don't want it in my place. I don't want it in my collection. This is from almost a year ago. Sunny Angels out of stock anywhere. This is on our Sunny Angels. This is an archive post, probably because the shortage is over. I recently started collecting Sunny Angels and have been all over town in search of them. I'm in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and they have been out of stock at every store I've been to. I heard some people on TikTok talking about a Sunny Angel shortage, but that was months ago. I didn't see the restock at Necomart. However, there's only 3 left in stock, and I'm sick and cannot get there in time. Are they always this hard to find, or did I just start collecting an unlucky time? Any feedback is much appreciated. And then they listed like all of the different stores they had been to. They have been hard to find in person for the past year, to be honest. It's really just about luck and checking in at your local retailers when you can. If in person doesn't work, I would try the online sites, be early, and also trading and buying here on Reddit. So buying and just trading on Reddit specifically, it looks like. Oh, I searched up blind box gambling on Google just because I wanted to see what would pop up. And I found an article, 800gambler.org shared blind boxes, how a popular children's toy is introducing gambling at a young age, which I'm sure I could make a whole video specifically about gambling online. A lot of gambling addiction for a lot of people is a very isolating thing, even though it does affect other people around you and things like that. But now, because of social media, it is now gambling content is a popular form of content. And I do believe that blind box unboxings and all of that is a subset of that. It's kind of the same thing as like watching someone unbox a bajillion and one blind boxes is a similar, I would assume, response to someone watching someone just do slots on a live stream for hours. Obviously, I'm equating two drastically different forms of media consumption, but I'm assuming that it's a lot of the same like dopamine response for watching that type of content. But I assume it's the same thing with watching sports versus doing something dangerous. You know, like I'm assuming I'm making correlations where there's probably nothing, you know.
I think specifically also with just straight up online gambling in particular, I do think there is that voyeurism element with people that online gamble. I mean, I know that there are gambling crash out compilations on YouTube because people, for some reason, really like seeing streamers and gamblers crash out on live stream because they just somehow wasted $10,000 in the span of 5 minutes. So there's also that. It could also be that with watching someone obsessively try and open up a bunch of labubus to get what they want. But I don't think it's the same type of person watching that content, if that makes sense.
I would be curious to know, you know, what percentage of people that do get into blind boxes and put a lot of money into blind boxes potentially lead to more severe forms of gambling. But also, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still using money. Like there is money being spent in the pursuit of gambling here as well, whether it's on a blind box or at a slot machine. You know, like there is money that you are losing and money that you are risking. The difference is that with gambling, not saying this is preferred, but with gambling, the risk is maybe losing the money or making more. In this, the risk is getting the item that you want, you know? And so it's like a more tangible thing that you do or don't get. I'm explaining this so poorly. In my brain, this is making sense, and I don't think I'm explaining it well at all. But I want to talk about this because this is help for gamblers, support for family and friends, and things like that. If you have been down the toy alley lately, you might be surprised to find one of the most popular. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I talked about the cults of mini brands because mini brands was a huge thing a few years ago. And like, not to say that mini items aren't a huge thing as well, but like that in and of itself is a blind box in and of itself as well. So like, again, a lot of the other things that I've talked about or covered in general, I feel like can connect back to the blind box craze. So really it's more like a facilitator than necessarily the cult itself, the methods for creating the cult essentially. So I guess this isn't necessarily a what's not a cult but feels like a cult. This is like a how to make a cult type of tool. What's a tool to help you make a cult that's not a cult that feels like a cult? Blind boxes. Why blind bags are so rewarding for the young brains. This is interesting. The psychology behind blind bags is much more than just having a toy that children want. The concept is intermittent reinforcement, which was demonstrated in experiments with pigeons by American psychologist B.F. Skinner. In the experiment, the pigeons were trained to use a lever that would dispense food. If the lever gave food every time, the birds would only peck the lever when they were hungry. However, if the lever only delivered food at variable ratios, the pigeons started pecking the lever compulsively. This same concept rewards gamblers. Slot machines are a prime example of intermittent reinforcement. Chat, I have a compulsive gambler in my life. I'm sending them this right now. I'm going to be like, this thing called you a pigeon. Because I do think that would work on him more than me being like, hey, sometimes you lose a lot of fucking money. Maybe you should stop doing that. Here are some facts about how gambling behaviors can start young. The link between blind bags and youth gambling. You win some, you lose some. The principle of intermittent reinforcement is what makes blind bags so rewarding, just like gambling. Collect them all. An estimated 90% of children collect things. Collecting appeals to their natural curiosity and desire to gather and categorize, which I don't think collecting as a whole as well. I thought about this the other day. Like, when does collecting become hoarding? Like, when is that? My brain goes to the answer for me, I would say, would be organization, because there are things that I have that I take very good care of that I believe to be my collections. And then there are things that I have a lot of, like I have a lot of stuffed animals. They're just shoved in that corner. I think I just hoard those because I have a lot of them. I don't particularly like having them versus like the Snoopy and the Yuki Bear up there. Like, those are displayed. I take good care of those. I collect race-themed stuffed animals. But like regular stuffed animals that I have that I've just accumulated, they're just kind of there. So in my brain, it's like, yeah, those I'm hoarding. These are I'm collecting. Those are different because I take different care of them. So I don't think collecting as a whole is like a bad thing, you know, but I do think it comes to a point where it's like, when does the collection become, you know, a drain on your life's resources? In that, are you able to have a place to display these things in your home if you can't pay your rent? Are you going further into debt to garner these things while you are telling yourself that dealing with your debt, these things make you happier? Like, these things make me happier, therefore I can deal with my debt while I'm trying to get out of debt. But then also in accumulating more of these is adding to the debt. Do you see the problem?
Editing Amanda again, and I keep realizing that I look like crap. Anyways, I think also this problem comes down to our current modern day consumerism problems with rapid consumption, in that collecting is usually something that happens over time. You decide what you want to collect. Maybe you start collecting things without realizing it. And then over time, you start building up your collection. But right now, it seems like what happens a lot with younger generations, and especially collections that start based off something online, it becomes I need to have everything right now. So it becomes less something that you grow over time and something that you want to try and achieve as fast as possible so that you have that collection to show off, whether it's for yourself or for your friend group or whatever, or to get in on the hype before the hype dies down. And so I think that is a problem in and of itself, because obviously me buying one Sunny Angel once a year or once every couple of months when I happen to stumble upon them is one thing. Me buying 4 in one go is a different discussion.
The odds are not in your favor because some toys in the set are rarer than others. You could purchase dozens of bags without receiving the desired toy. Over time, the cost could be significant. We see this as well with, like, obviously, like, trading cards and things like that, which I do think trading cards is a subset of, like, do we categorize them as blind boxes? Because I guess blind bags and trading card packs are like the same thing, where there are people that go into debt. Like, we saw this whole craze with the Pokemon cards where people were like, oh, this holds more value than like some other stocks and like NFTs and all of that. Like, this is rare, therefore there's money in it. Sorry, I want to wear the sweater like this, but it keeps sliding because it's not meant to be worn like this. But I think this looks cute anyways. As many as 4 to 5% of kids aged 12 to 17 may have a gambling problem, with another 10 to 14% at risk for developing one. Gambling with blind bags may encourage real gambling later in life. That's what I would be really curious about, is like going through people that gamble now and see how many of them were into collecting and things like that. Like, I'm sure there's studies that have done that. Yes. Coveteur wrote an article in 2023 by Lauren Malanga. What's behind this wave of inner child consumerism? Which I do think this all comes down to, because a lot of the people that I see making content around Labubu, around Sunny Angels, are women about my age, women in their late teens to 20s. Okay, I would say. And so at this time, especially for Gen Z, we are not living the adulthood that we were essentially promised. Okay, a lot of people are in debt. A lot of people have student loans. A lot of people are working constantly and never having time for a social life or to live, etc. And so they are trying to get the dopamine and happiness where they can get that. And that is where you have people buying the small bits of joy, inner child consumerism and things like that, which good and bad. I do think there's a line with everything. With the inner child consumerism, at a certain point, you're just hoarding things and you're not dealing with the underlying issues of like being unhappy. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I know why I'm unhappy. My world is on fire. There's a Cheeto in office and he keeps trying to take people's rights away. Like, that's a really easy thing to look at the situation and be like, that's what the problem is. There's not much I can do about that at this exact moment in time. So I might as well buy the sweet little treat of a toddler. My point is that I do think there's like bigger issues associated with the initial, how can I deal with this immediately right now? How can I get this sweet little treat right now? How can I get this one toy to make me feel better? I like collecting these things. I should be allowed to collect these things because what's a $10 box? Angel, a line of miniature dolls created by Japanese toy manufacturer and inspired by the cartoon character Kewpie, has experienced a boom in popularity in the last few years alone. The brand first graced the market in the early 2000s. Thanks to content creators unveiling mystery unboxings, showcasing prize collections, and even fashioning bespoke outfits for their Sunny Angel dolls, a vibrant community has emerged. Individuals navigating the complexities of their mid-20s have come together seeking solace from their taxing adult routines and basking in the unbridled joy of childlike bliss. My grand entrance into the world of Sunny Angels began when my friend enlisted me to help source these dolls for District, a startup for collectors of all kinds of toys. It wasn't until I realized that there was a Sunny Angel shortage that they piqued my interest, which quickly evolved into a full-blown obsession. Scarcity and demand, count me in. As a whole, this article basically comes to the same conclusion I have, where people are unhappy with their 20s and they're looking for some form of happiness and escapism. So I will link this down below because I do think this is a good article. I think this is interesting compared to some of the other items that I have covered in What's Not a Cult But Feels Like a Cult series, because these items are literally designed to be collected. When I talked about, let's say, Ray Dunn, there were items that like were collectible items essentially, but the frenzy around Ray Dunn was a lot around the secondhand market and also around the concept of having everything, even though Ray Dunn, as its inception, was around, you know, the individual pieces of every item being different. Things like Stanley cups, like those are not designed to be collected. They've now leaned into the collector's market because they're like, oh, there's money here. But like the concept of Stanley cup is that you buy a cup, you have a cup, it's a good cup. Congrats, you have a cup. Versus having a bajillion and one items and every single accessory, the secondary market and the obsession surrounding it. Items like blind boxes and the collections themselves are designed to be collected. And so like it makes sense that the frenzy has formed around them because there is the gratification of collecting them all, like I said. Then you also have the gratification of, oh, I collected them all. What's next? You know, let's get them all. Let me get all my labubus. Let me get the labubu I want. I've bought 3 labubus, but they're not the labubu I want. I like this Sunny Angel, but they just came out with the dessert collection. I need the dessert. This one's breads and cookies. No, this is the cookie one. I also feel like the obsession with the actual items themselves, like the obsession with the Sunny Angels, the obsession with the labubus, the obsession with literally any blind box item is all secondary to the initial, I get to see what's inside this box feeling that comes with buying yourself a gift. This is essentially the concept of giving yourself a gift and wrapping it and unboxing it, except the wrapping's already done for you and you really don't know what you're getting. I think this is like sweet treat culture on an 11. Like truly. Yeah, I guess this whole thing that I'm saying, and like I answered my own conclusion where What's Not a Cult But Feels Like a Cult blind box editions. No, this is the how to make a cult video, is you just stick it inside a blind box and the dopamine receptors in the brain will do the work for you of making a cult. And like there has been, you know, other instances of people doing like blind drops and things like that in the past, where I believe Selkie used to do this. I don't think they still do this, where they would do like drops where you could buy like a blind bag of items and like it would just get like random items, I believe. And then there would be people who would then go and be like, hey, I got an extra large. I'm a small. Does anyone want the extra large? Or did anyone get a small? And they would like be like trading or selling and things like that because they could get the items discounted. But I feel like there was always drama around those. I don't think that was ever a positive thing, but like that was the thing that actually happened because you could get the items discounted, but you couldn't control what you got, literally even by size. If I remember, God, now it's gonna get me. Surprise bags, do they still do this? Oh my God, are they coming up right now? Is this real? Surprise bags return Wednesday, 2/28 at 2 p.m. Get ready for our much anticipated and surprise bag sale. Choose from 6 bulk inventory bags and 6 sample bags, each featuring a curated selection of pieces that will likely never be available again, including rare finds, never before seen samples, limited stock, and coveted sold out designs. Oh, it'll be interesting to see how these do. We shall see. I did not know this was coming back up. I really just had an idea. I was like, I wonder if they still do this. Surprise, they're doing it again. Selkie, I don't think like they blew up because of the blind bags and things like that. In fact, prior to this, the only time I ever heard of the positivity for that was with those bags. I do think there are limits to the blind bag applications for like creating a cult like obsession with your products. Like for example, my blind bag experience was not positive, so I will never buy a blind bag from a comic book convention again. So like, but within the actual like buying a blind box from a booth there, I got this cute little Leonardo. I'm happy with it. I do think there has to be an actual like rigid structure to the blind box to effectively use the blind box to make an obsession. But like Labubu, there's a couple other ones that I saw at Popmark where I was like, I see where this is going from. I do think it's an interesting trend, and it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. I don't think these are not going away. Blind boxes are not going away. The Stanley Cup frenzy, I do think, is cooling off. Okay. Ray Dunn, I never hear anything about it anymore. Mini brands I still see at the store when I'm wandering by the toy aisle and things like that. But like, nothing as frenzied as it once was on social media. Now, it doesn't mean that these subcultures and these spaces don't still exist, but when they start moving away from the obsession of online and there's not whole channels dedicated to them anymore, then that's where I start to be like, interesting. And I start taking note of those things. Sunny Angels, Labubu, there will be another thing that will be inside a blind box that people will obsess over next. Therefore, what's not a cult feels like a cult? Blind box edition, because the blind box is something that can just transcend different groups of obsessions of cults. The facilitator of said cults. Okay, this is all over the place. This is a mess. But I had fun talking about this, and I love just yapping. Anyways, that's going to be it. Have you ever bought a blind box? Have you bought a Sunny Angels? Or are you personally victimized by the Sunny Angels shortage? Do you like Labubu? Have you bought Labubu? I like Labubu. Sunny Angels is like a nice name, but like Labubu rolls off the tongue. Labubu. I just like it. Have you bought Labubu? Let me know. Comment down below. Reminder, I stream on Twitch. Reminder that Swell Entertainment is now available on Spotify. Reminder, use code SWELL for 10% off on gamer subs. Shout out to my channel members. You'd also like to join channel memberships. You can go ahead and click join down below. If you'd like to follow me on all social media, that'll be up here. And that's going to be it. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. I want you to know that took me a long time to get the camera to focus on this little thing's face.